Recording in progress. Chair, have you started or is me who have a problem?
Good afternoon. Apologies. There's no feed. We cannot hear anything.
Good afternoon, honorable members. I've put the YouTube link in the chats. In the meantime, while they try to sort out the technical glitches, the meeting has already started. If you can just watch it on YouTube in the meantime. Thank you so much.
The YouTube link is also not working.
This is unacceptable. Can this meeting please be stopped? We cannot interrogate if we cannot follow. Please.
Sorry, there is no link on YouTube either. It's not working.
And that is credit to the provincial leadership in most of the provinces that have taken it upon themselves to support municipalities to come out of this data. When we started with this new administration of local government following the 2021 elections, we had 28 disclaimers. We're now sitting at 14. It's still 14 too many. However, it does demonstrate that there has been attention to this area. The 7 adverse audit findings or audit opinions are also concerning because those municipalities are those where they submitted financial statements, but even based on our audit of the record that they would have given us to support the information statement, we came to an opinion that we did not agree with those financial statements. In brief, it says that those financial statements are simply unreliable, they are not credible. We move then to the purple zone, which is the ones that have got qualified audit opinions. Qualified audit opinions are those where we say that the financial statements are incorrect in specific areas. At least we can tell you where the problems are. So it's better than accurate. But if you look at the fact that that's 35% of the base of municipalities across the country, it tells you that we have not yet built the capability.
Chair, can you hear me? Because I don't hear anything from your side.
Me too, Mkalipi.
Chair, we're street children here with the Honorable Sompa. We don't hear anything.
Can we as members please just have some feedback? We don't know what is going on. This meeting is continuing or not continuing because we cannot hear anything, we cannot see anything, and no one is responding to us.
Marina, check the link I've posted in the chat. It says here they've paused the meeting and it was because of the technical difficulties.
Is on the platform. Is on the platform. You can say. Okay, fine. We'll keep the phone on whilst we proceed so we don't lose time. I don't understand how we ended up here. Not only that, this thing should have been fixed before we got here. Absolutely. Yeah. These are the two venues which have got hybrid, and this is the one and the one in the main house. So they should be able to fix this. But we'll use the phone in the meantime. Let me just check Honorable Van Beek. Who wants to use my?
I am here, Chair. Chairperson, I am present.
You are on the platform, but we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you far in the background, Chair.
I'm far. Okay. Can we get someone
Yes.
to? I think your problem, you can't hear us, we can hear you.
Okay.
All right. So what we'll do? Let me see that. Oh, this is Van Beek. Where's Van Beek? Has anybody got Van Beek on the phone?
I'm here, Chair. I'm here, Chair.
No, that's fine. We'll proceed without worrying about you then, because you can connect. Let's just deal with
Yes,
the other
Chair.
members. All right, that's fine. Let's proceed then.
Remus, can you hear me?
Sorry. Muthelezi, Honorable Muthelezi,
No.
just check on
No.
the platform. He's not on the platform.
No.
Honorable Kalipi, you can't hold another meeting there. You are with us here.
Honorable Van Zyl,
Yes.
can you hear
please come
us?
to your side meeting. No. You see now, we're going to cut you off. We're not here party looking. No, that's fine. Ask the other members not to be part of your meeting. I think the members are all fine. I think the Honorable Chelezi. Who? Somebody, she's fine. Okay, just check, Honorable Kalipi, maybe you are the only one who can't hear now. Honorable Fansay, just check if you can't hear. Honorable Fansay.
Chairperson, can you hear me on the platform? Because it seems like I can hear you through the platform.
I can hear you from the platform loud
Okay.
and clear. Honorable Labus
I've disconnected from the phone.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me on the platform? You only do that when you can hear me on the platform. Are you fine?
Let me leave your call again and then test,
That's fine, sure. Honorable Labus Kahne, I see you change your mind. You are now virtual. Are you okay? Labus Kahne? Yes. All right, you're muted, but I can see you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Your hand, you can. Wonderful, thank you. That's fine. Honorable Chelezi,
It's not honorable.
Ngozi is not on the line yet. All right, that's fine. Just keep an eye in case Ngozi joins and there's a problem as well. But I think we're almost all settled. Okay, all right. Now, honorable members on the virtual platform, you haven't heard anything. Should I ask the Honorable Auditor-General to just do a 5 minutes
Come on.
Yes, please.
All right, that's fine then. Thank you. Honorable AG, thank you. I'm very sorry about this, but we are back online. Everyone is online, and I'm sorry to the honorable members. This shouldn't have happened, but anyway, we are here. So we'll take a brief summary and then we'll proceed from there. But thank you very much for participation. If there's anyone else, just ask them to just send us a message. We'll be able to see how to connect them. Thank you very much. Ms. Malonega, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I will not redo the preamble. I will only state that indeed we have completed the audits for MFMA 2024. We have made sure that the reports that we've completed are tabled in the respective councils. We've also analyzed the outcomes for each province and engaged the provincial leadership, specifically the provincial executive as well as the provincial legislature, We've also had the opportunity to engage with the national executive on the national picture, which is the one I'm privileged to share with you this afternoon. The outcomes that I would want to talk to, I would like you to attend to the very last line on the slide, the last row, which sets out the outcomes for the 257 municipalities across South Africa. When we started our analysis, there were 10 audits that had not yet been completed. Since then, we've completed 7 of those and have updated the numbers, and hence this updated number at the bottom of the screen. The reason we would have had 10 audits outstanding when we started the analysis is that sometimes municipalities do not submit their financial statements to us on time. The law says they should submit financials to us on the 31st of August so that we can audit and complete those audits by the end of November. Unfortunately, there is still a tendency amongst the number of municipalities to miss that submission deadline. So there were a number of late submissions and we were able to complete those. In terms of late submissions, which as the honorable members will recall, it's a matter we would have raised before. There has been some gradual improvement across a number of provinces, especially in the Northwest, where the provincial leadership played a big role in helping their municipalities to submit financial statements on time. The one province that is still struggling to get municipalities to submit financial statements on time is the Free State province. So that's the one where the provincial legislature and the provincial executive really need to take some bold action to ensure that that situation is addressed. There were 2 audits that were delayed due to audit process matters. There were disputes at Umsunduzi, which was ultimately completed following the conclusion of that technical dispute between the municipality and the audit team. And that municipality ended up with a qualified audit opinion. There was also a dispute and some delays at Machabeng, and that audit was subsequently completed. So the people of Velcom have now got an audit report available to them, which is a qualified audit report. Coming to the 3 that are still outstanding, there are 3 audits that are still outstanding because the submissions have not yet been completed. Specifically, Maludia Pofung, Mafube, as well as Tabacheo. Tabacheo submitted their municipal accounts, but they didn't give us the financial statements for the entity, the development entity that is a subsidiary for the municipality. And so that's why we've not yet been able to have a full submission from them. Maludia Pofung, similarly, they had not consolidated their entity, so that submission is still to come, as is Mafube. The matter around submission, then you can see, is still a problem in the Free State, even with the ones that have not submitted. A little bit of good news is that the disclaimers of audit opinion are coming down. When we started with this administration that came into leadership following the 2021 local government elections, we had 28 disclaimer of audit opinion. And the honorable members would have heard us speak about how undesirable and intolerable a disclaimer of audit opinion is, especially when somebody is looking after public funds. The good news is that that matter seems to have enjoyed some attention from a number of provinces, especially the provincial leadership that supported a number of their municipalities to come out of disclaimer. And so we now are sitting with 14 disclaimers. It's still a matter that we need to find a way to address. This legacy of tolerating disclaimers of audit opinions is something we really need to leave behind. Then there are 7 adverse audit opinions. Adverse audit opinions is when we say that the financial statements are wrong. We cannot believe that they can be relied upon by the users. Again, that's also completely intolerable. It's something we must be able to deal with. And then there are the qualified audit opinions, making up 35% of municipalities across the country. That's a big component of municipalities that are unable to publish credible financial statements. And the areas that they struggle with are quite important, and I'll come back to it now. But what I want to highlight is that when you've got so many municipalities that have not yet got the capability to compile credible financial statements, it raises a number of critical questions around competence of the people in the administration, but equally competence and discipline around the people in the political leadership. There should be no mayor that allows a situation where year on year there are qualified financial statements emerging out of his or her administration. Most municipalities have got CFOs that have got skills. It is still concerning that we have the expenditure budget of local government being handled by municipalities that can't get the financial statements right. The next category is the yellow one, which many municipalities like to celebrate. They'll say, well, the AG gave us an unqualified audit opinion on our financial statements, right? Our financial statements are credible. The challenge here, Chair, is that if a municipality is unable to deal with performance reporting and compliance, it tells you that you do not yet have the capability you need for that municipality to predictably do what they're supposed to do with the money in their hands. One of the things I did when I did roadshows with the teams that I lead within the audit office, we put up the list of the municipalities with unqualified audit opinions. And I merely asked them the question, if you were Minister of Finance or MEC Finance in this province, and you had aspirations that the municipalities in the province would drive infrastructure projects because you want to improve service delivery, you want to drive economic activity, and you want to create jobs, would you put money into those institutions and believe that they will do with it what you hope for? And the answer was no. And the simple reason is this: an unqualified with matters around performance information and compliance tells you that that institution doesn't have the culture of ensuring that they plan for what they're going to do, monitor what they're doing, execute in a disciplined way, and deploy public funds efficiently. It tells you that they do not yet have the internal controls and the standard operating procedures to give them a good chance of enhancing the quality of how. But the underlying operations are still very weak. The governance arrangements are problematic. Maybe to zone in on this point one last time. Of the 99 with unqualified with findings, 71 of those gave us financial statements that were of poor quality when we started the audit. So if we had audited and stopped, 71 of the 99 would not have received an unqualified audit opinion on financial statements. It's important for me to raise this because I want to make the point that it tells you that financial management discipline in that environment is pretty weak. And then you've got the clean audits. The good news is that we are back to 41 clean audits, which is where we started back in 2021. So we're no more at the 34 that I talked about last year. However, that makes up 16% of the municipalities across the country. That tells you that only 19% of the municipal expenditure budget is being spent by municipalities that will predictively give you the outcomes you hope for, in that they have the disciplines and governance arrangements for you to trust that whatever money you send there will be spent in the way that you expect. So overall, in terms of summing up the story around outcomes for 2024, it's good that we've returned a few more clean audits. It's great that we are reversing this trend around disclaimers of audit opinion. However, the state of financial and performance management disciplines in local government still leaves much to be desired. And so the story in many ways is similar to what I would have shared before. I worry, honorable members, that I will sound like a stuck record this afternoon. Let's move on to the next slide, which deals with the outcomes for the metros. The 8 metros across the country look after half of the expenditure budget for local government. They look after service delivery that affects 46% of households across the country. Their budgets are quite significant. They sit in the centers of economic activity. And so, given the scale of their operations, the complexity thereof, but also the resources that they manage, and even their location, they should have no difficulty attracting the skills that they need to run their environments. Unfortunately, out of the 8, we've got only 1 clean audit, which is the City of Cape Town. It was the only clean audit last year as well. The 3 that sit in the unqualified space, City of Ekurhuleni, City of Joburg, and eThekwini. Of those, only City of Ekurhuleni gave us quality financial statements when we started the audit, and eThekwini. These 2 gave us quality financial statements when we started the audit, meaning that their ability to compile financial statements is quite strong. City of Joburg didn't give us quality financial statements when we began our audit. Now, that's a big city, the biggest in the country, the biggest on the continent. There should be no difficulty in ensuring that you've got the skills and the capability to do what you're supposed to do, just on compiling financial statements. The ones in the yellow zone also struggled with performance information. So eThekwini and COJ struggled with giving us credible performance information. Ekurhuleni did. They've got good performance information. The reason performance information is important is that if somebody doesn't give you a good performance report, it tells you that their ability to plan for performance, monitor the execution of their plans on an ongoing basis is quite weak. The Municipal Systems Act provides a very clear set of prescripts around what should happen with municipal performance planning. You've got the 5-year plan to the IDP, which is reviewed by MEC Cocta and his or her department, and then ultimately approved by council. You've got the SDBIP, which the mayor must be held accountable for, which then goes through the MEC Cocta and then ultimately goes into council for approval. And then you've got the quarterly reports, which are compiled by the MM and given to the mayor, which are ultimately also submitted to council. And then you've got the mid-year assessment, which looks at performance at the half year and adjusts budgets at that point. The mayor has big responsibilities in that regard. Section 54 provides significant authority for the mayor to deal with this. And they are then required to check if budget expenditure is being overshot and make the necessary adjustments and respond when there are problems. When we don't get good quality performance reports, it tells us that the process is quite broken. The quality of information being prepared and used for decision-making in the quarter, at the half year, is poor. It says that the attention that the leaders of that municipality are paying to service delivery matters is suboptimal. We then come to the ones that have got qualified audit opinions. BCM, COT or City of Tshwane, Mangaung, and Nelson Mandela Bay. Again, these sit in big centers. They should have the ability to attract and retain the skills that are required. However, if you look at those names, you'll know that they had challenges around stability at council level, stability at administration level as well. And what it tells you is that the institutions have become weaker and weaker over the years, and they are simply not geared to do what they're supposed to do. Buffalo City Metro, a little fact, had a vacancy for the district engineer position responsible for electricity. And that vacancy has been there for 80 months, 80. Yes, 80 months. They have a similar vacancy on the district engineer responsible for sanitation. And that vacancy has been in place for 24 months. We've got to ask the question on where things fall apart. Why would a city like that struggle to get these critical technical skills that are there to help them drive service delivery and even look after assets? The continued weakening of institutions of these metros over time has led to a situation where their financial health has deteriorated. Many of them continue to be downgraded, 3 of them just this year. Has led to a situation where their infrastructure projects are not well managed. When we go visit their projects, we find that they're either delayed or they are not commissioned or the work is of poor quality or they're overspending. It tells you that even the conditional grants that are sent to municipalities to get them to drive infrastructure projects are not being well used. Sometimes they go back into the fiscus, but often they're simply not well used. The weakening of these institutions is something that we need to arrest, and courageously, boldly, and urgently so. When you look at the complexity of a metro, and you consider the complexity of their operations, and you look at the scale of the budgets of these metros, one's got to really consider whether in the leadership of these metros, we've got the type of people that are equal to the task. And by leadership, I'm talking not just about the city manager, but equally about the mayor and the speaker, etc. Because if we don't worry about that, we won't be able to build capability for the institution. And if we don't worry about that, we'll never even see consequence management or accountability happening in the way that we expect. The metros around infrastructure, so I talked about the new projects that we see, and we see many problems there. If you look at the deterioration of the existing infrastructure, it happens often because they don't budget for proactive maintenance on infrastructure assets that they currently have. The norm that the National Treasury has stated around the provision that should be made for infrastructure maintenance is that there should be 8% of the value of existing infrastructure set aside as a budget for repairs and maintenance, for regular maintenance. We're finding that most municipalities do not meet that 8%. In fact, a city like Plein will budget 2% or 1% or something less than that. A city like Joburg also doesn't budget adequately for maintenance of existing assets. And so what happens is that these assets continue to deteriorate, and then the distribution losses increase, water losses, electricity losses. And then, of course, that creates a financial health problem, a viability problem. We also find that the deterioration of infrastructure affects the services that are available to citizens through interruptions or even the quality of the service that's then delivered. The metros, in our view, need particular urgent attention if we are to get them to become the centers of economic growth, infrastructure spend, and the centers that will genuinely make the lives of South Africans better. Right now, it would appear that we don't yet have that. The next slide deals with the matter around the submissions, which I was highlighting earlier on. What we did on this slide is we picked out 7 municipalities across the country that are problematic in terms of regular submission of financial statements. So you'll see that Ubuntu in the Northern Cape submitted financials on time in 2021, 2022. However, 2022, 23, and 23, 24, those financials were submitted late. You'll see that we're pointing out that the Free State has significant problems in this regard. In 2022, we had late submissions for those 5 municipalities on the screen. In 2022-23, 3 of those submitted on time. And the reason that happened is that the year before then, we had highlighted to the then Premier the importance of setting the correct tone on the submission of financial statements. And so he asked us to check in with them a few days before submission and indicate if we were worried about submission, which we did. At that point, he called each of those mayors and said, you will come and submit those financials in front of me. And that's what happened. However, in 2024, this year that is under review, that didn't happen at the level of the speaker, so we went backwards. These 7 municipalities that are habitual late submitters look after a budget of 6.85 billion, of which the equitable share together is 1.6 billion, and the conditional grants are 580 million rand. They look after over 300 households. We point this out to give you a sense of the scale of the problem and why it's important for the leaders at the provincial level and even at the national level to worry about these matters. The honourable members will be aware that I did submit a letter to the Honourable Speaker in accordance with the provisions of the Public Audit Act and the MFMA to highlight where the submissions had not been done on time and to ask her to refer the matter to the relevant portfolio committee in Parliament for follow-up. That's the nature of the governance arrangements that currently exist. The next slide deals with the disclaimer of audit opinions. As I said, the good news is that we're moving in the right direction. We're keeping a record of the journey on disclaimers because we wholeheartedly believe that this is something that's relatively easy to deal with if a different tone is set, and we must leave it behind. The Northwest, I'd like to point out, you see that many of the municipalities that were repeat disclaimers for years actually are getting out of that space over the last 2 years. And that's because the provincial leadership in the Northwest made work of this. Unfortunately, it's come at a significant cost. They spent this year hundreds of millions of rand helping these municipalities through consultant spend to submit financial statements that could be supported by evidence. So it's a matter that we are watching because the work can't stop there. This support must then be followed up with ongoing attention to the leadership and to building capability in those municipalities. However, I believe it's a good story around what's happened in the Northwest on these disclaimers. There are 3 that remain sticky in the Northwest: Lekwatemane, Ditsobotla, and Radlong. These are municipalities that have been problematic for many years. You'll see that Ditsobotla has had a disclaimer of audit opinion for 8 years consecutively. And I don't think there's a South African that has not yet seen a headline around the dysfunction that characterizes Ditsobotla. The other red dots I would want to point out are in the Eastern Cape. You'll see that Makana and Sunday's River Valley continue to have disclaimers of audit opinion, 6 years going now. And you know that Grahamstown and Kirkwood are characterized by dysfunction. In fact, the service delivery problems in Grahamstown are known to all of us. And that's consistent with the governance problems that lead to a repeat disclaimer, where the people in charge of that municipality really have no regard for transparency and accountability, and it translates even to what happens on service delivery matters. The provincial treasury in the Eastern Cape, together with the provincial COPTA, tried to support these municipalities. They developed financial recovery plans, they developed municipal improvement plan, and those just went unimplemented by those 2 municipalities. So it needs a different treatment, more than one that can happen through administration or through the administration. And then there's Kanaland in the Western Cape, which has had a disclaimer for the last 3 years, and it is one that has got a number of governance brought upon by the coalition arrangements in that council. But at least we're moving in the right direction. I think that's one thing I would like you to take away from this slide. On this slide, we give you a sense of the respective provinces. As I indicated, we've been able to engage with each of the provinces at the level of the executive and the legislature. Maybe just a couple of highlights for your attention. Of the 41 clean audits, 20 are in the Western Cape. However, you even see that in the Western Cape, the outcomes are going backwards. They're losing a few clean audits. They've got a disclaimer in the form of Canaland. They've got an adverse in the form of Lensburg. So there's quite a bit of work to be done by the province in the Western Cape to bring back the governance disciplines within municipalities. I'd like to also point out, while we're talking about clean audits, that the Free State and the North and the Northwest have not seen a clean audit for many, many years. In fact, the Free State last had a clean audit at Fezile Dabi district back in 2016. It's going to take some doing to get to a point. It's important to drive at least one, is that it gives the people that run municipality a sense of what's possible. There's an example that people can look to. It also, I have to say, gives some inspiration to the team I lead. You can only imagine how deflating it must be to have to keep auditing in an environment where there is no attention to driving accountability improvements over time, because that's what this tells you. The Gauteng province, which sits at the center of much of our economic activity as a country and houses 3 of our biggest metros, that province has not gone ahead in terms of any improvement. In fact, what we've seen is that the metros are going backwards rather than forward. KZN, we've seen some improvement over time. However, still a great deal of work to be done to get to a point where that set of improvements is felt by the citizens of the province. Similar in the Eastern Cape, some encouraging improvements, fewer disclaimers, a couple more clean audits. However, still a great deal of work to be done to ensure that governance and proper financial and performance management are felt by the residents of the respective towns. I also want to point out that Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Northern Cape are also not really moving in the right direction. You'll see that if we improve 6, you'll find 5 going backwards. If you improve 6, you'll find 3 going backwards. So there is still no stable push in terms of the right direction. And the evidence you would have seen being quite clear in the lived experience of people in those provinces. One thing I want to highlight about Limpopo, because we'll talk about it just now, is that they've tended to rely on using consultants to get their financials right. And that's been a trend for many, many years. Unfortunately, it continues, even when there have been undertakings to remedy the situation. One of the things I hold in my heart around clean audits, because sometimes people think clean audits are a technical thing and it doesn't translate into how you live, right? Midvaal is the municipality in Gauteng that has had a clean audit for over 10 years. So when we visit the teams, I always ask them about how it's like to audit different institutions. So when we were talking about Midvaal, I asked the team, I said, guys, what's it like to audit Midvaal? Tell me, who audits it? Put up your hand. This gentleman puts up his hand. He says, man, when I audit Midvaal, I have some problems. I said, what's the problem? He said, no, you see, I get speed traps every time I drive to the audit. What do you mean? He said, no, because the roads are good. That's the thing. Then I said, tell me, what else about Midvaal? They said, well, the municipal buildings are in good shape. They said that the pool, the council-owned pool, is in good shape. I asked them a bit more about how it is to audit municipalities that have clean outcomes. And they tell us about basic disciplines in those environments. One told me about another municipality where they were auditing, and they said, when we submit financial requests for information as part of our audit, the rules in the office say the person from whom we're requesting this information has 5 days within which to give it back to us. In environments where people have clean audits, we find that they are quick about giving us this information. The ones with disclaimer, you must wait those 5 days and still follow up. There was a province, I think it was the Free State, where they had not seen a clean audit for a long time. So I said, you know what, you guys, maybe you've lost your sense of what a clean audit feels like. Why don't you go visit someone else? Join another team, because we're a big office. Go join another team that's auditing a municipality that's got a clean outcome. The following year, I asked the individual that went, I said, how was it? This person says, I was so surprised. In the morning, I gave the CFO a request for information, and I thought I would wait the 5 days as I'm used to in the Free State. He says, well, by the time I drove home, I got a call from the CFO that said to me, please, I have sent you an email with the attachment of the information you asked me for. If you can't open that attachment, meet me in my office at 7:30 tomorrow morning and I'll give you the flash disk. I was shocked. Now, these are basics, right? These are basic things that should prevail in every environment, in every single public institution. The next slide, honorable members, deals with the financial statements. This one is about us highlighting that when you've got unqualified opinion, it doesn't always indicate that financial management disciplines are sound. You might recall that when I talked about the unqualified opinions, I said 71 of them gave us poor quality financial statements. So this analysis basically says, when we started the audit, only 63 municipalities of the 257 gave us quality financial statements. By the time we finished, we were able to get, through a combination of the clean and the unqualified, 140 credible financial statements. The difference is that people could correct financial statements whilst we were auditing. And you see that the metros are not any better in terms of quality financial statements. We raise this because it tells us that even though in the main we've got skilled CFOs, we haven't got the disciplines of doing the basics during the year. It tells us that internal audit is not doing well. It tells us that audit committees are also not doing well. It also tells us that the action plans that are developed at the end of the previous year's audit are not being implemented, because if they were implemented, things would improve. The areas where a lot of municipalities struggle with financial statements relate to receivables, which is debtors, making sure that you know who owes you what money and that you're collecting from them regularly and you manage your debtors book. When you've got so many municipalities struggling with that, it tells you that they're not billing correctly, they're not collecting properly, they're not managing that debtors book. They also struggle, our municipalities, with accounting for their property, plant and equipment and infrastructure assets. This might sound like, well, that's a technical thing that auditors are worried about. What it tells you is that they don't have a sense of where their assets are, how many they have, what condition they are in. And the reason they don't do that is because they also don't have a maintenance plan, and certainly not one that they're implementing regularly. So we flag this not just as an accountant's problem, but as a management problem, which has grave consequences for revenue going forward and for service delivery going forward. And on the next slide, we point out that, you can go to the next slide, thank you, and it's an old message which you will recall, where we highlight the ongoing over-reliance on using consultants. The problem is not on using consultants per se. The problem is on ongoing reliance that's inappropriate and on bad quality spend. You'll see that this year, 219 municipalities spent together 1.47 billion rand on consultants purely for the purpose of helping them compile financial statements. Last year, we reported 1.37 billion, so you'll see that the number is not really changing. This when there are CFOs in place and there are finance functions that are populated with people that have been appointed. We also note that that get disclaimers of audit opinion also still spend on consultants with 6 million rand. Municipalities with adverse also spend on consultants. The ones with qualified also spend on consultants. It tells us then that there are key questions we have to ask about why is it that even when there's staff in place and there are consultants being appointed, we still get bad quality submissions. So we keep asking our teams this, and we've been asking them this for the last 10 years. And the answer says, the issue here, and you see it on that round circle, the issue here is that in most instances, the work of the consultants is not being reviewed. They say, well, there's 2% where the consultants didn't deliver, but much of the problem is either consultants are appointed late, the underlying documents are not available, or that their work is not being managed properly by the people that appointed them. But I believe that the part that should worry us all is that green part, the light green, which says the work of consultants was not adequately reviewed. What it tells you is that you've got CFOs and finance staff in place. They appoint consultants every year. And then once the consultant is there, they basically leave their desks and say the consultant must engage with the auditors, which in our view, it tells a story about culture and discipline more than even skills. There is an element where the people under the CFO, there are some who are appointed and don't have the skill to do the basics. However, much of the problem, we believe, in local government, especially in this area of overusing consultants, relates to the part about discipline. The next slide deals with a matter that we would have raised last year as well, which is that we are concerned about the deteriorating financial health of municipalities. When you've got years and years of poor financial management, you're going to have problems on financial viability going forward. Yes, there are some municipalities that are unviable by design, right? They don't have the revenue base that one would expect. However, we are highlighting that even when the resources are available, they're not well managed. The culture of approving unfunded budgets remains a problem. This year, 113 municipalities approved unfunded budgets. This, despite the fact that the Provincial Treasury would have reviewed the budget and given advice, or the National Treasury for metros would have given advice, municipalities continue to approve unfunded budgets. Many of these, of the 113, 86 of them were doing it for the last 3 years consecutively. So it's become a culture. And of course, when you have an unfunded budget, it means as you start, you know that you have expenditure that you can't fund. So what happens? You end up with a deficit and an overdraft situation. You don't pay your creditors, and then you try and keep covering this hole every single year. And of course, then if you've got this sort of scenario, the things that you should be doing year on year remain undone, like maintenance. We also are highlighting that even when these unfunded budgets are approved, we still see unauthorized expenditure, meaning that where you've got expenditure levels approved, people are spending beyond that. And that's why you end up with unauthorized expenditure. And of course, that then compromises the financial health of those municipalities going forward. Many of them ended up with a deficit situation, and many of them have got major creditors that they don't pay, such as the Eskom, Water Board, etc. Suppliers and creditors to municipalities are waiting on average 286 days to receive the money that's due to them, because cash flow has become very tight across many municipalities. And of course, what happens is when suppliers are not paid, many of them charge interest and penalties. Much of that ends up as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. This year, the National Treasury worked with Eskom to design the Eskom Debt Relief Program, which was aimed at helping municipalities enter into a settlement arrangement with Eskom, disciplined action to manage their cash flows and expenditure habits. It's not working. 84% of the municipalities that participate in that program are not complying with the conditions that they subscribed to. Again, in many instances, that's a discipline issue. We're also seeing that some of the expenditure problems relate to how indigent benefits are being dealt with. So part of the equitable share that comes out of the National Revenue Fund goes into municipalities to help them support indigent families. We're seeing that municipalities mismanage these funds. They either don't have a register that's well updated, so they end up paying benefits to people who are deceased. They end up offering benefits to people who are even in their employ or in the employ of the state, or are even suppliers to that municipality or to other parts of the state. Basically, you've got far too many people benefiting from the indigent policies and the indigent funds that shouldn't benefit. And then you've got people who should be benefiting left without access to those benefits. And these are funds that as Parliament you would have agreed are important to make available to support families that are under pressure. And unfortunately, we're seeing that they are not getting that benefit. I come now to matters around performance management and reporting. When I talked about the metros, I largely dealt with this in terms of saying that we're seeing that there's too little attention to the management of performance. Municipalities can do the tick boxing. So they'll tick a box and say, we've done our IDP. But no one really worries about the content of that IDP, whether it is giving expression to the things that they should be doing. Sometimes we see that their performance plans give no sense of how they're going to do basics like deliver water, for example. It'll include all sorts of other things. That IDP is supposed to go to the MEC COGTA and that department to be reviewed. You can tick a box and say it's been reviewed, but then the substance of that work is found wanting. And then it's approved by council. Then the annual plan is done. Similar sort of cycle. When we review that annual plan and the ultimate report, we find that some of the critical things that municipalities should be doing are not given expression to in that plan. So if you don't plan to do stuff, it's not going to happen. And then we also find that the indicators that are there are not really geared to driving real attention to impactful service delivery. And then we also find that the performance report, the scorecard at the end of the day, is not one that is credible. The reason this is important is that even if you haven't done what you were supposed to do, at least be accountable for it. At least be transparent and be accountable for the choices you've made. The fact that this area of performance reporting remains in such poor shape and in many ways is done as a tick boxing measure reflects poorly on how seriously the MMs, the mayors, the internal auditors, the audit committees, and the council take performance, how importantly they take it. In fact, we say that there are far too many of them across the system that don't take this area as seriously as what they should. As part of our work, we have continued to invest time and resources to go and look at projects, at infrastructure projects, much as we did in the last year. And I want to remind the honorable members that the people who go and inspect projects are not bean counters as I am. There are people who've actually got skills in the engineering and the quantity surveying field, people who can actually tell you whether a bridge is in good condition or not. People who can actually assess the phase of a project. We've actually been able to build that capability within Team AGSA over a number of years. This year, we went to 113 projects. We selected projects mostly in the metros and in those that have disclaimers of audit opinion. What we found that the majority of projects had problems. 77% of the projects we visited had problems. Either they were delayed, there were cost overruns, there was poor quality work, or even when things were completed, they were not being used optimally. And then we also identified matters around the inadequate maintenance of infrastructure. The reason this exists, in our view, is that even if performance agreements are done as a tick boxing exercise, they are not monitored. And sometimes we find that contractors are appointed and they're appointed poorly through a procurement process that is not in compliance with the law and one that does not lead to the best decision. So then the contractor that's appointed is one that's not equal to the task. Then they are not managed by the people in the municipality. That contract management capability is not there. the municipality doesn't have employees within it that have a set of standard operating procedures, a set of disciplines, and even a set of skills to monitor the performance of those contractors. And worse still, even once they've seen problems with the performance of the contractor, they don't hold them accountable. They don't follow through on what sits in the agreement around how to hold that contractor accountable. In a nutshell, what this all leads to is that we end up with much money spent on projects that don't see the light of day, that citizens do not benefit from. And so as we think about the capability of municipalities, we've got to think beyond the debits and credits. Do you have a CFO that can do the books? We've equally got to be seized with asking questions about whether there are enough skills and disciplines to give us assurance that the money we put into municipalities to drive infrastructure projects will be well spent. The sad reality we have now is that having looked at the metros, far too few of them have that capability. The projects in the metros are problematic. Other than the city of Cape Town, many projects in the metros go in the wrong direction. And this obviously also causes harm to the public that then is exposed to infrastructure that is either incomplete or in disrepair. I come now to the matters around compliance. This is also a stuck record sort of moment because we would have said exactly the same thing last year. Other than the municipalities that have got clean audits, you've got the majority of municipalities with material compliance findings, mostly in the area of procurement and contract management. In a nutshell, it tells us that we do not yet have a culture, a set of controls, a set of operating procedures, and even accountability mechanisms that ensure that the rules are indeed complied with. And as you can see, the metros are not any better. And given their significant budgets, one would have thought that this area of procurement would enjoy tremendous attention by the people that hold the purse. I think I'm going to skip this slide because I think it says much of what we would have said before. And then the matter around the material irregularities. As the honorable members know, back in 2019, the powers of the AG were amended and we were given the responsibility to look carefully at areas of non-compliance and to flag areas where we believe that material financial loss was happening or where we could see that there is harm being caused to institutions or harm to the public or even misuse of material public resources. And the law says that if we should see that, then we are supposed to notify the accounting officer, give him or her the time and space to implement the corrective action and to continue to follow up. If that accounting officer fails to do his job or her job as given in law, then we can issue a stronger recommendation, which features on the audit report and forms the basis of what is then engaged upon by council, by the provincial legislature as well. The other thing we can do is we can refer matters for investigation to other public bodies, and the other matter the other action we can take is to take remedial action. I'm pleased to say that we've continued on this journey. We've identified material irregularities. We've been able to get accounting officers to act on some of them and to get money back that was being lost. On a cumulative level, we had identified MIs that were leading to financial loss that were estimated at 8.74 billion rand. Over time, out of that, 700 million rand has come back and 244 million rand of financial losses have been prevented and 370 million rand are financial losses that are in the process of being recovered, leading to resource protection of 1.32 billion rand on a cumulative level. Honorable Chair and honorable members, last year I would have reported on similar figures. Last year, the number of resource protection that compares to the 1.32 billion rand was just over 900 million rand. I point this out to say that the pace at which things are happening is slow. we're not recovering money in the way that we had hoped to. And this should worry all of us because it tells us that the people entrusted with protecting public funds are not only preventing problems, but even when problems arise, they are very slow to act on those problems. They're very slow to get money back. They're very slow to discipline their staff. They're slow to make sure that they protect resources. In the municipal space, we really are seeing a slowdown in action on our MIs. So the instrument is not quite having the impact we would have hoped for. We find also another impediment to progress is the instability at MM level. What happens is we make progress heading towards a certificate of debt, and then the MM is changed or moved somewhere else. Then you have to start again. We cannot overstate this. The route to better governance, better performance, better resource protection is to prevent the problems to begin with and to take swift action as soon as they arise. We've had some successes with getting people to submit financial statements because we issued MIs when they were not submitting. We've had some success with getting them to deal with disclaimers because we took the view that if you have a repeat disclaimer, like let's say at Maludia Pofong, you are harming the institution that should be serving the people of Harrismith. We've also been able to issue MIs where people don't submit performance information, and that's coming right now. Another interesting area has been where we have used our powers to get accounting officers to attend to wastewater treatment plants that were in disrepair. Because through our infrastructure work, we were able to see assets that were not functioning well and causing harm. So we took the view that you're harming the public, you're harming the environment, so you must deal with it. So we've seen some good responses in that regard. Some of the matters we've had to refer to the Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as the department charged with environmental affairs for their further attention. And then we've also seen instances where municipal infrastructure that's been invested in is not being utilized in the way that it should be. In a nutshell, I want to leave a message that says the National Audit Office continues to implement its power to good effect. However, we are concerned that the responsiveness within the system is not commensurate with what the moment demands when you've got diminishing resources and growing needs from a service delivery point of view. The behavior of accounting officers and mayors and speakers and MECs is not reflecting the type of urgency that this moment requires in our view. And if we don't get that right, we're not going to reverse the slide in local government. We're not going to get local government to shift towards better performance, accountability, and transparency. And I'm now getting towards the end of my input. I want to just highlight that in our report, we've spent quite a bit of time unpacking the role of the MECs of COPTA, much as I indicated to yourselves, especially around the performance planning and their monitoring of performance. We've even picked out specific parts of the law that indicate what these specific roles would be. So the Municipal Systems Act provides that the MEC of COPTA in every province must compile a report that analyzes the performance of each municipality. And that report must include remedial action that that MEC is taking and or that municipality is taking. And that report must go to the provincial legislature for their attention. That sits in the law as it stands. The law also provides that the MEC of COPTA ought to provide the provincial legislature every year with an analysis of how municipalities are responding to the audit findings and recommendations from the Auditor-General. And the MEC must provide that report to the legislature for their attention. We have found that those reports are either not done. If they're done very late in the day. And they're also either not tabled in the legislature, and if they are tabled, they're not dealt with in the legislature. We include this in the report because, as I said when I dealt with the ecosystem of accountability, we believe wholeheartedly that if MECs did their part, they wouldn't be lurching from crisis to crisis. If the provincial legislatures did their part, they wouldn't be waiting for the AG to say there's a disclaimer here. They would be monitoring these movements as a matter of course. The Municipal Systems Act also provides that the National Minister of Cooperative should compile a report that consolidates the MEC's reports from across the country that basically deals with performance of each municipality and the remedial action, and that report must go to the legislature for your consideration as honorable members that oversee local government. We have found that that report is often not done, and if it's done late, and there isn't yet a rhythm within the legislature to process that report. The report that was tabled recently, I think in January 2025, from the National Minister of Cooperative, related to the 2022 audits. The summary I want to leave with yourselves is that we have to get every single player in the ecosystem of accountability doing their part. Otherwise, we will not arrest the decline of local government. We've also in our report detailed the role of the mayor. We've gone to look at the legislation. We looked at what's provided for in the Municipal Systems Act, as well as in the Municipal Finance Management Act. We found that far too many mayors can tick a box, but the substantive issues around how they've executed their duties do not reflect. There shouldn't be unfunded budgets that are the order of the day. There shouldn't be ongoing service delivery problems that are the order of the day. There shouldn't be ongoing poor accountability for performance if these things were being given effect to. So once again, it's about saying, do we have mayors that are aware of their responsibilities and are equipped to competently deal with those obligations on a regular basis? And that's the conversation we believe needs to be had, especially as we're now thinking about the structure of local government and the white paper conversation that the Honorable Minister Tlhabisa is spearheading. I think it's a useful contribution, having looked at the questions that the discussion paper that was gazetted raised. It raises the critical questions. As we think about what needs to change, we should also consider what currently is and is simply not being applied. Because many of our problems are about things that are already in place that are simply being disregarded by the people that are in those roles. Honorable members, I've spoken a great deal. I am now moving to the very last slide, which summarizes our recommendations and our call to action. We've got to deal with the governance failures that prevail in local government, within the institutions, as well as in the other spheres of government. We've got to worry about, yes, the administration led by the MM, but we've got to equally worry about the mayor and the speaker and the council. Similarly, we mustn't stop there. We must look at the role that's being played by the provincial executive, the provincial legislature, the national executive, and the national legislature. If we do that, then we'll have some hope of building the capability we need, whether it's skills, competence, ethics, standard operating procedures, policies, technology. We've only built those things if we sort out the governance arrangements. If we don't deal with governance, we'll never be able to sort out accountability and consequence management. I'll leave you with a story which still keeps me up at night. On one of our audits, there was an irregularity we identified. Payments were going through the bank account of this particular municipality that shouldn't be going through it. We raised this matter with a CFO who's qualified. And we said to her, you've got to deal with these payments. You've got to stop them. She stopped some, but one. When we went to inquire, why would you not stop this one? She simply said, look, you can do what you like. You can recommend. I'm not touching it. I said, well, I value my life. So that story still makes my hair stand because it tells me that unless we deal with these governance failures that arise because of who's in the mayorship, who's in council, unless we deal with those things, we'll never get the municipal sector to do what it's supposed to do. And on that, I rest. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, quite a sobering report or account, if I may say, but certainly very welcome. Thank you very much. I think, honorable members, this time around, an additional point that has been made by the Auditor-General relates to holding the Speaker, the Premier, and the Provincial Legislature and Executive accountable for some of the things that go wrong in municipalities because of the role and responsibility they have over those. I think we will have to consider where we might actually have to visit and have an audience with the Speaker, the Premier, in the presence of those municipalities. If things have been going wrong, there have been serial disclaimers, serial outstanding and late submissions, serial poor performance. What have they done to correct that? And I can see already a couple of provinces that are ready candidates for such visits. Because I think at the end of it, we can't all throw our hands in the air and say, what can we do? We need to actually say those who have a responsibility to correct the dysfunctionality and the poor governance need to be taken to task. And I agree with you, at the end of it, it is not only about what the reports are about, it's also about the leadership of that particular municipality, which goes beyond just administrative, it includes political. But it also includes the issue of the monitoring. Now, when you have to train auditors in the Auditor-General's office to be able to go and see the bridge that's constructed properly, I think we're overlapping and doing stuff that somebody else would have done and reported before you came. And these, I think, are the issues that you should be all concerned about. Let me say at this point, we do have an apology from the minister. As we know, minister was in the cabinet and then got stuck with various other issues. So we're no longer expecting the minister. He has sent the apology. I do note that also on the platform, the deputy ministers have clocked in. Deputy Minister Benz Namashe, I can see, I'm not sure about Deputy Minister Masimula, but nevertheless, they are welcome. At this point, I'd like to request the members of the Portfolio Committee to make their comments. Obviously, we will need a little bit more time to go through this, but I think we need to just get a sense of their first reactions. I will therefore be requesting members to raise their hands. We will favor those who are on virtual platform to come in first. Then we leave the best for the last. That is those who are here. So I have already Honorable Mkalipi, will be followed by Fine Sale, and then Labuskafne, and after that we'll come to Ndamase and Direko. Can we take that order? Honorable Mkalipi, you may show your face if you are able to do that, but we can hear now, so you can just go ahead.
Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chair. No, I can't show my face, Chair, unfortunately. I welcome the AG's briefing. It's always good to have the AG to paint a picture on the very important sphere of government that we all belongs to, because even the AG belongs to a particular ward under the certain municipality. So it becomes very close to our heart, the report that seeks to update the portfolio committee on what is the status of the municipalities, because it affects all of us. Chair, I agree fully with your way forward or a directive or guidance to say that those municipalities seems that they are struggling, they need to be called in with their premiers and with their MECs. Together with the municipalities to come and account. For instance, the AG talk about the municipalities in Free State. They are still struggling. It's still a bad picture with all of them. So I think I agree with your suggestion. But I want to understand the consequences of unfunded budget in terms of the report that the AG briefed us about, because she also paint a very bleak picture that is one of the challenges that we are struggling with. The third one, which is the last one, Chair, I didn't hear the AG when she was speaking about the letter that she wrote to the Speaker of Parliament. If she can repeat that, because I'm sure, Chair, as the committee, we want everything that suggests that we want to solve the problem of the municipality. If there is a letter that was written by the AG to the Speaker, please can she come back again and then tell us what was the letter details about, so we can make a follow-up as the portfolio committee. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Van Zyl.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the AG for her team and herself. I know it's a lengthy project to try and get all the municipalities obviously audited year after year. And for us, it's just as bad because we hear the same story year after year. And it's very unfortunate for the residents of South Africa. I just want to, Chairperson, a couple of clarities from the AG. The first one was
recording
on the...
stopped.
May I proceed, Chairperson, with the recording that has stopped?
Can we just check why the recording has stopped?
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Chair. The three outstanding audits at the moment that we still have, which is Maluti, Mafube, and I didn't hear the last one, but I'm assuming it's Majabeng. What now? What going forward? What has the Auditor-General's office done to approach the province or the municipalities in question? What is the scenario? And it's quite harrowing to understand or to see this, because we actually did visit Maluti Apafong, and you would not believe, the same with Mangaung, that's got a disclaimer, the arrogance that persists in those leadership to say that no, everything is fine, because we've seen this in Maluti as well as Mangaung. So I wanted to find out the process going forward with those three. Then I wanted to appreciate the 20 out of 41 clean audits that comes from the Western Cape, which we do know is the best run province and best municipalities in South Africa. Then, Auditor General, I wanted to find out if you had a magic wand and you could fix the problems that we have, what is the one problem that you would identify, and what would the solution be? I know you've painted the scenarios and sort of danced around the facts, but I wanted to find out from you, an opinion from you, as if you had the magic wand and you could fix one thing to fix local government, what would that be? Then, just on a point of consequence management, because we have seen it, and I even asked the Deputy President a couple of weeks back if consequence management will start under Operation Vulindlela to be implemented, and he said yes, indeed. So we are waiting to see what the plan is on that, because I think with only a few municipalities receiving clean audits and many disclaimers, that process should actually be quite lengthy and a swift one actually, to get rid of these people. I wanted to find out the top management report that is made available to the municipalities with regards to consequence management. Because in those top management reports, you would see exactly where the issues are, but that only reaches the desks of the top management. That never gets released to the broader council. Is that something that we could maybe look at making available to the broader council and for transparency, even to the public? I think that is possibly an avenue we could go down. And then I wanted to do a little statement or a question. I'm sure there will be responses that I think could be quite controversial. But with the picture that has been painted by the Auditor-General about how bad it is going in South Africa, how infrastructure is crumbling, how residents are forced to stay in sewage-ridden streets, how electricity is out, how there's no water in the taps, etc., etc. With that being said, rates, tariffs, taxes year on year gets approved by councils. And residents are paying more and more and more for non-performance. Essentially, that's what it is. So it is like this black hole that residents need to keep on increasing on their rates and paying more for tariffs. And it is sort of a free-for-all on the other side where there's no leadership and no consequence management, whereby money is just spent frivolously. There's unauthorized expenditure. So with that picture, would it be a possibility to say to these municipalities, you cannot actually increase these rates and these tariffs? So I'd like an opinion on that as well. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes, let's get the next comments, but I'm not sure the last question you're asking through the right debate, it belongs to engagement with the minister, it belongs to parliament, and we must also not abdicate our responsibility over performance. We need to really say, what should we do to push them to do the right thing? And that we have a debate on our hands. Specific questions you asked, and I think it would be important for the AG to give the correct response, particularly on the third outstanding submission. I think this will be just put on record so people mustn't have the wrong understanding, because you made a name, you gave a name, but I think that's not correct, so it's going to be corrected. Then the other one is about disclaimers and Mangaung. So again, I think that we need to just get it correct. The rest of the questions, I think we will wait for the response from the Auditor General. Let's have Honorable Labus Kahne coming in. Thank you very much.
Chair, thank you very much for the presentation. As everybody else said, it's always good to have the input from the AG. And although a lot of these things sound familiar, this is our role in Parliament to do oversight and to see how we can have an input in trying to help and get better outcomes, especially in local government. You referred to the lack of payment or providing budget for maintenance, and especially in the metros, that it's not up to standard. Now, maybe it's an unfair question, and I don't know how long for, the presidential task team was also put into place to help assist specifically in the metros. At this stage, it's focused on the metros. In the auditing process, could you already pick up that this sort of kind of support is helping with trying to have solving some of the problems in a sustainable way? That is the first question. Then the second one is the expenditure problems that you referred to referring to the misuse of the equitable share and the sorry, today is not a good day. Indigent registers, there I have it. And unfunded mandates and unauthorized expenditure and all those things. I do know that the consequence management, we all agree, is a problem, and specifically in municipalities. But from your side as the AG, on which of these levels, what kind of consequence management you outlaid that, but did that increase in this year's audit in comparison to last year? And I ask this question because you actually gave us the increase in the amount of money that has been that was as a result of your consequence management. And so did that increase in this year with expenditure? Then you refer to the procurement processes and all the things that's not right there, which we always see and hear when we visit municipalities. And specifically what you've mentioned is that many of these projects in municipalities are run but the people are not actually benefiting from that. I would like to ask the question, and it's just an opinion, and we can later in the portfolio unpack that. The measurement at the moment, the department in their strive to monitor municipalities and have a measurement instrument use the 6 pillars as been referred to in the Constitution. And one of those pillars, for instance, is local economic development. Well, coming from various schools of politics, we say that government is not responsible to give jobs, but have to create policies and environment where job creation can happen. Now, my question is, are these 6 pillars not too wide? And that gives a sort of a loophole to municipalities to find many other projects that make sense to either politicians or to a pressure group in the community. And these things are happening instead of focusing on the basic services first that municipalities are responsible for. And my question is, in your opinion, should we not, now that we have the chance in the white paper, review not the 6 pillars, because I agree with the 6 pillars, but if municipalities should use that as a measurement instead of the things that they really need to do, like basic services. Then, that is actually my last question, because I assume that the AG will definitely give a good input on the findings through all these years on what should be included in the white paper and what should we really have to drive for. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Nabuskachne. Your last comment basically answers your question. I was going to say to you, we must not bring the AG into party political differences in approach, but I think between us, that's an issue we must discuss between the members of the portfolio committee and the minister. Should we be including local economic development as a responsibility? I think we will differ. So that's fine, but it's okay, we'll have that discussion. I'm just saying that we will understand if the AG does not get too much into that, but they will have their own opinion. Yes, you want them forced to answer.
Can I just correct this? I'm not saying it should not be part of it should not, it's there, it's in the Constitution. I'm not debating that. What I'm asking is, in the measurement of municipalities, the 6 pillars are being used as the sort of basis. Those are very broad pillars. they should be somewhere there. But I'm asking, and we're already saying that we can't, let me not say too much because that is where the misunderstanding comes in. What I'm saying is, should we not start with municipalities, first of all, should focus on the basic services that they have to render to their residents. And if they are within their budget and they have a funded budget for those basic services, they can look at all the other things, the nice to haves. Because we all know people are not going to invest in a municipality or a metro where they don't have electricity, where they don't have water, where it's dirty and those things. Those are the basic things. If the roads are not good and all those things, they can sponsor a soccer team for 27 million rand that will not enhance economic growth. They can do various things on that level. But if the basic services are not good, they will not attract investment and business. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think with that amendment, it makes it clear that we'll have a good discussion with the minister. If you are not getting satisfied with the AG, it's okay. Let's move to the next comments. Honorable Ndamase.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, AG. I would like to take your point further in relation to the consequence management, where we have alluded to the lack of consequences that we are saying it's widespread. My question is, one would have assumed that with the amendment of the Audit Act, at least it's given the Auditor-General some teeth. Is there anything that can be done more to be able to respond to that question, to that challenge that you are experiencing there in relation to the legislative part of things? Then, secondly, there is a slide where you were speaking about the legislative roles of minister and as well as MEC. And then you went on to argue that those reports I would assume that in some instances are not submitted to the legislative arm of the state. And then my question would be, do you, from where you are seated as the Auditor-General, think that there is some legislative gap? Because there was some time in relation to the local space where there was a feeling that there is a over-regulation. From where you are seated as Auditor-General, do you think there is a gap legislatively in relation to those aspects wherein you were talking about these roles that refer to the MEC as well as the minister? Then when you were talking about the Limpopo and consultants, the sense was that this has been happening for a number of years in relation to the utilization of consultants by that province. Of course, we're not saying that that is the only province, but of course, you have managed to pick it up to be able to argue as you are arguing. It's a new administration, it's the seventh administration. What is the tone in relation to those consultants and how the province has been performing in relation to the utilization of consultants in that particular province, AG? Then, as well as the issue across the country that relates to consultants, to what extent is there any skills transfer in relation, because one would assume that if you utilize consultants, the assumption is that there will be skills that are transferred so that when they go and there is a sense of the skilling of the personnel that is there. What is your take in relation to that? And the low budget for maintenance in the metros. One would, because it is the same institutions that are complaining about the infrastructure that is deteriorating. They are saying it themselves when we interact with them. Then what is actually happening? Is there a situation where they prioritize other things in terms of their own budgeting and not prioritize this key issue that has everything to do with the service delivery from where you are seated as AG. Finally, Chair, there are 3 municipalities in relation to the outstanding audits. That's Free State as well as Mpumalanga. Having interacted with the leadership in those provinces, what's your sense of the tone in relation to this situation that is happening, which is we're all embarrassed in relation to what is happening there? And even if it was one municipality, then your sense in relation to the tone as far as this specific matter that you have raised is concerned. For now, Chair, let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ndamase. Honorable Direko.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also welcome the presentation by the AG. Chair, when we look at the financial system failures, we also note most of the things that the AG has just raised. And I must also say that it's things that have been happening for the past 10 years. Then one asks yourself as to why are we still having the same problems each and every year? And I believe that we also need to shift our focus a little bit and broaden the accountability ecosystem of local government, because in most cases, we only focus on administration. Whereas in those municipalities, we have the political leadership that are part of that particular municipalities, which are also responsible for ensuring that there's accountability. And we also need to zoom into the underlying factors that are contributing to the challenges of municipality. As we've also heard, the AG was telling us about the untouchable things. Then we need to also zoom into those things. Why are these ones not touchable, and what are the issues on that? And we also have the council committees such as your MPEC, which are responsible for assisting municipalities to reduce the number of material irregularities, of which something that is not happening in most municipalities. We also have the provincial government, which are receiving reports from municipalities every quarter. But it's unfortunate that in most provincial government, they are unable to identify the red flags. We only get the red flags when the AG is reporting. Then it means somewhere, somehow, someone is not doing what they are getting paid for. We also have us as parliament, which were responsible for oversight. So AG, mine will start with us as parliament. What are the specific actions that you recommend for parliament to implement in order to strengthen our oversight mechanism and ensure that there's a compliance in terms of the MFMA provision based on your experience in auditing these municipalities? And we also have a Free State which has challenges, and for many years we're unable to produce clean audit. And on Free State, you also raised the issue of Malfube and Maluti-Apofung, of which Malfube has been under administration 139 intervention for the past 10 years, but they're still experiencing the challenges that they are having currently. Both Malfube and Maluti-Apofung, if my memory serves well, they are also the great offender in terms of the disclaimer audit outcome, and they are from Free State. So as we note, that Free State is one of the provinces that is continuing to struggle with the annual financial statement submission and audit completion. And in your view, AG, what could be the targeted intervention to assist that province? I know one of the municipalities in Free State where they had challenges of submitting the audit outcome, there was a program like where the AG was stationed in that particular municipality every now and then to assist. I'm not sure whether was it Machadeng or what, but I know there was that municipality that was receiving ongoing support from the AG. And also, what should be the role of both provincial government, especially Proctor, Treasury, and the Premier, in order to resolve these challenges of Free State, and also what to deal with this tendency of non-submission in our province? And on your presentation, we also heard that there are municipalities who had dispute with the audit outcome, such as Umsunduzi municipality. How does AG ensure that the dispute are resolved efficiently without compromising the integrity of the audit outcomes. And lastly, AG, you've also noted these underlying factors such as the basic discipline, time frame of submitting information, the asset register, indigent register that is not updated. What could be a possible solution to this in municipalities? Because we've got municipalities where sometimes you will have a political will, but no administration will. Others, there will be administration will, but no political will. How does your office try to strike balance when you are dealing with the audit outcomes, where you encounter a situation where you have opposite in terms of the people who are supposed to submit or who are supposed to give you all the information that you need? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just check? Honorable Mkalipi, your hand is up. It never went down, so please drop it if it is old hand. There's a hand of someone who is not a member of the committee. May I bring this to the attention of whoever is attending, that the only people who will be expected to participate are the members of the portfolio committee, the ministry, as well as the Auditor-General's office. So it will be through the guide of the AG that other members can participate. If it's in from the ministry, then of course we'll get guidance at that level. I think it just to clarify for members to understand how we're approaching this. In the meantime, may I just say, AG, there are lots of questions we've asked you, but certainly what we should also discuss is what we should be doing ourselves. Now, just a few issues, just for clarity, to see where we can work together. You have identified the role of the provincial speaker and the legislature and the executive. So I see that that's one thing, or one of the things we need to go and deal with. However, we might need a little bit of refined information in relation to specific actions that should actually have been taken by those, so that when we have to meet with them, we have to be focused on dealing with this issue. I'll give you an example. This committee went to Maluti Apofung, and one of the questions which we had to ask, and which was very clear and puzzled us, was how could you have a disclaimer for the past 4 years and the municipality still have the same CFO and the same MM and the same team in the finance section, and there's no action on all of them. You see, it was very strange for us, but we need kind of guide on the specifics so that we're able to deal with that. I would ask the same question when it comes to the non-submissions. They are serial offenders. Now, we had a funny statement here where when we were in Maluti, where they said to us, they assumed a disclaimer approach. Okay, they said, doesn't matter what we do, we are going to have a disclaimer, so doesn't matter, we will have a disclaimer. Now, we all had a misunderstanding as to, can you take such an approach actually? So the issue here is that we need a little bit more focused information to deal with these issues. So for example, we're talking about consequence management. Now, one question, do you ever, if there's been serial transgressions and you have got the same people in office, do you ever raise the question directly that by now there should have been action on this particular individual who's been leading the serial offenses? Is that outside your scope? Because when we have to deal with this issue, we have to be a little bit more direct in terms of, okay, there should have been a report by the MEC to the executive. Has there been such a report? There should have been this report to the provincial legislature. Has there been a report? Okay, now premier, there was no report, and this is what should have happened by law. Have you acted on it? You understand? We need something a little bit more focused so that we don't all go all over when we deal with this issue. Then your work will actually have helped us to improve on, ensuring, accountability. So as you respond then to these questions, I would have loved to have a situation where a team from your side, if we say we're visiting the Free State, let's sharpen the areas that will make it easier for us to reach the points of conclusion which you need to reach. Because otherwise you can spend the whole day with one municipality responding and not taking you any further. But we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with, has there been accountability? If not, okay, then we should then be appealing to the next authority. But why haven't we acted on this one who has not ensured that this is being dealt with? For example, you got a municipality, you say there was no engineer for 80 months, but the supervisor is still in office. They have not been acted upon. And the political head are quite comfortable with that situation. Now, and of course, in the province there, in the same province, the provincial leadership in the province as well, is fine. They don't have a problem with it. 18 months. And then the MIG is not properly spent and the infrastructure is deteriorating and the sewage is flowing down the river and the community is processing and so on. At which point does somebody say the line is drawn here, no further? And that's the point we think we need to reach. Now, our role is to actually draw those lines to say, but you can't be here. And you should have acted by the time we got here. And therefore, we take the matter forward. So I'm saying what the members are raising with the AG's office, we're trying to get to that point to say, how do you help us to be more effective in holding everyone accountable? Because where we're sitting, we're not going to blame you for a bad appearance of someone whose picture has been taken because they look bad. But it's not your problem. Your problem is that you took the photograph and the person was like that. And in this case, we are saying, let's talk about what is it that will help us to deal with the issue so that the issue of accountability and the consequence management is focused upon. And I'm happy with the way the committee has been handling it. I think we just need to be more focused and then we need to move out and probably change the approach a little bit. So please, you can give us a guide on some of these issues. Of course, as you know, this is a political committee as well. It will throw you here and there on some of the political issues. I'm fine with it. We just need to be able to say where you are not comfortable, we're not worried about that because we will debate those issues ourselves. Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to the honourable members for their questions and comments. Maybe let me start where you ended off, Chair. As the committee considers the report we've tabled today, and it highlights areas where you might want to focus, we will ensure that from our office, we come and brief you in detail on the areas where you might want to focus. If you decide you want to go and spend some time in the Free State, as some of the honourable members have indicated, we'll come and brief you on what the issues are in the Free State, where things are, who's done what, who hasn't done what, so that you can shape your oversight visit based on that. So we will make sure that we bring somebody here who can sit down with you and take you through a detailed briefing on the areas where you decide you want to go and focus. If it is Mpumalanga or the Free State, we will be able to do that with you. I think that's definitely the best way to do it. Then you get the type of detail that will inform your work so that it is indeed focused. In fact, what we've done in the past is to make sure that you're also accompanied by some of our team members who can help you make sense of what is being presented back to you in the moment. Some of the questions that have been raised, especially by Honourable Labuskaghni, are policy matters. I would not be able to formulate a view on the appropriateness of particular political decisions or policy decisions. Our job is to audit the information and share with you insights about what's going wrong and why. So the point we are making around the municipal performance issues, arises because as part of the Public Audit Act, we have to audit the usefulness and reliability of performance information. We also have to look at whether or not the laws relating to performance management have been observed. And we are required to give you a sense of what the internal control environment is like. So the insights we're able to give you are based purely on that work. I believe that if we can sort out the disciplines of performance management such that they match the existing design as indicated in the relevant prescripts, much of what you're concerned about would be dealt with. Because what will happen is that the performance planning will work well in a transparent way. The choices that people make around what it is they prioritize will be done transparently, and they'll be able to be held accountable for those choices. So that if somebody chooses to rather abandon an existing project of expanding the capacity of a wastewater treatment plant and rather build a sports field, you can hold them accountable for that choice. As things are, when the process is not one that gives you transparency, it's very difficult to hold anyone accountable. And it kind of becomes this black hole. So at the end of the day, we've got to get these disciplines right. And as I said, the Municipal Systems Act provides very clear prescripts on how the process should happen and who should be doing what. To go back a little bit in terms of the matters that were raised, Honorable Mkalipi, you're right, the Free State is struggling. The submissions are a problem. The municipalities that are outstanding, and I think it was Honorable Labusachni who was asking about which ones were outstanding. It is specifically Mafube, which hasn't submitted. It is Malutia Pofong, which tends to not submit on time, as I showed on that slide when we dealt with the serial offenders on timely submission. It's either disclaimed or not submitted. Some people choose to not submit, then you kind of miss the accountability process, because this report of the AG finds its way into Parliament long before your audit is done. No one ever talks about you. And this goes on year on year. That's the reason why, honorable members, when I started my presentation, I spent such a great deal of time on this matter of outstanding audits, because we have to push back on this behavior. The same thing around the disclaimers. People who get disclaimers, they approach it like that. They even say to our teams, just audit and give us a disclaimer, it's all right. The reason they do that is because they know that it's very difficult for anyone to conduct oversight when there is a disclaimer. You can't rely on the audit report, on the financial statements, you can't rely on the performance report, so you can't have an accountability discussion. Part of how we have approached our work over the last couple of years is to demystify what's happening in a disclaimer, to explain that this is not a technical thing. This is about people who don't want to maintain records. We've also used the work we do to give you an insight on what happens at these municipalities with repeat disclaimers. We go and visit their facilities, and we can give you reports that say, well, they're flouting the law. They're not even maintaining their landfill site. They're not maintaining the wastewater treatment plants. They're not delivering services. So that the conversation from yourselves as members responsible for oversight is informed by what we've been able to glean through our audits, and you are equipped with insights that help you link what can sound technical as disclaimer audit opinion to dysfunction on the ground. And then you're able to shape your oversight work in that way. Honorable Mkalipi, you asked me about the letter to the Honorable Speaker. I beg your pardon, I thought the committee was aware of it. It's a letter that I write every single year. The law requires that at the end of the audit cycle, I must account to the Speaker and indicate which audits I've been able to complete on time, if there are delays, to explain that to her, because I too must be held accountable for fulfilling my constitutional mandate. And then when I've not been able to complete an audit, I must explain why. And part of that explanation is to indicate that some of these municipalities did not submit. So it's a letter I send every single year. This time around, it was actually, it ended up in the media, so I thought you might be aware of it. I'm aware that it was also referred to the Standing Committee on the AG, and it formed an engagement between myself and the Standing Committee on the AG, which is where I account as Auditor-General. So the basis of that letter is the law and my obligations in law. And the text was really to say, Honorable Speaker, this is where I am, this is where where the submissions are. I'm concerned about these submissions. I'd like you to please refer this matter to the relevant committee within Parliament. The reason this letter is so important, and as I say, it's in the existing legislation. The idea is that the members of Parliament would also be aware when people don't submit financials for audit and see who is basically going rogue with what are public funds. Because if you don't submit 1 year, okay, maybe you lost data, maybe there was a fire, things happen, right? But if every single year you are not submitting or you are submitting late and you keep getting away with it, we then got to keep asking ourselves questions about how you regard your role as the steward of public funds that you are entrusted with. Because these municipalities get conditional grants, they get equitable share, and yet they don't want to then submit financial statements for audit, which is a very basic accountability issue. So that's why I flag it in the way that I do, and that letter was just part of that. The consequences of unfunded budgets, it's very difficult for me to answer that question because it would appear that there are very little consequences. The mayor that approves, the mayor and council that approve an unfunded budget should be held accountable. And maybe I'm coming to the point about what magic wand would I like. I'll offer what I'd like. 2 things. 1, quality leadership at the helm of metros in particular. 2, political consequences for people who hold public power in this way. That's the magic wand. We can all hope. The management reports, those reports are what they say, they are management reports. There's a level of detail in those reports that's relevant for the people that are charged with running that municipality. They do reach the level of the mayor. I would imagine that the speaker would have access to a management report if they're so required. However, it is not a public document. By its very nature, it has detail that allows management to deal with all manner of internal controls issues that we raise. The consequence management aspects that you're concerned about will be in the audit report. And in fact, what we're doing more and more now, the material irregularities process basically gives another avenue for us to give better transparency to yourselves around areas where consequence management is not being applied. I do not believe that it is appropriate for us to be publicizing management reports. In terms of my opinion on rates, I don't really have an opinion other than as a ratepayer because I too belong to a ward. And then in terms of the presidential working group in the metros, that's a relatively new development. We've not audited its impact. We've not seen municipalities where that impact is evident yet because remember, these reports relate to the year that started on the 1st of July 2023 and ended on the 30th of June 2024. And then Honorable Ndama said there were a few things you raised. What could be done more around consequence management? Should we be changing the law? I don't believe that we should be changing the law. There ought to be better political consequences for people that hold political executive authority in these institutions. The roles of the MECs and minister, I don't believe that there are legislative gaps as I see them, but I am open to correction, not being an expert in statecraft. Limpopo, the tone on the utilization of consultants, the Premier has been quite clear and adamant that there must be value derived for the use of consultants, that this area should be managed much, much better. In fact, our engagement with her a few months ago gave me confidence that she will indeed attend to this aspect. In terms of, you also asked me about the tone of the leadership in the Free State around outstanding audits. So that slide I shared with you on the that slide I shared with you on the outstanding audits, those 7 and the 5 in the Free State, I think is giving you a sense where I said in 2021-22, the submissions look like this. The Premier did a few things, the then Premier did a few things in the following year. The submissions had a couple more green ticks, and then we went backwards for the 2024 financial year. I think it gives you a very good sense that the tone is not commensurate with what the movement demands. In terms of Mpumalanga, the Premier was quite clear in wanting to deal with these issues. So it's a very different tone from what we experienced in the Free State. Budgeting for maintenance, I think it's about priorities. You know, no one ever has a budget that meets all the things they want to do. The reality is one's got to prioritize. And then one must be held accountable for the choices they make on those priorities. And I think that leg tends to be missing. And then is there skills transfer on the use of consultants? Often not. And I say this boldly for two reasons. One, we've been tracking this area for over 10 years now. I remember the then AG Terence Nombembe raising this thing, and it started in the Free State. And at the time, I was an executive in the office, and we started to analyze it. And we've been tracking it every year since then. And what we see is that the ongoing reliance just continues to be just that, ongoing. It's every single year. There are very few municipalities that use a consultant for a year or two and then, you know, wean themselves off. They continue to use consultants, which tells us that there's no skills transfer. But then the second thing I wanted to offer. So by the way, the message in this report about use of consultants is the exact message we shared in 2013, 14, 10 years ago, exact same message. We went back to the report and I was like, this feels familiar. Why does this thing feel like it's not moving? We went back, same thing. The second reason I say there is no skills transfer is that graph I showed where I was highlighting why there are still errors when we get the submissions post the use of consultants. When people are not even bothering to review the work of consultants, it tells us that they've basically left their desks. They've said, consultants are there, bye-bye. So you're not going to transfer skills to people who are not even showing that level of work ethic and interest. Honorable Director, the role of MPAC, it has to be strengthened. It starts also with strengthening council because MPAC is a subcommittee of members of council. Now, the question is, do you have in MPAC membership that's stable and a membership that has got the type of capacity to do what's required? And there's a lot of training that happens for MPACs, but the instability and the inherent capacity remain limitations. In terms of the action that we would want from Parliament, I think it was the point that Honorable Mkhize raised around how could we then, once you've digested the report, you've decided where you want to focus, we come and brief you on specific items that can then further inform your oversight work. And as I said, we will make sure that we have team members that work with you in your oversight work so that you are ever more effective. Our mandate is that of supporting democracy. Our vision and mission is to enable oversight. So an engagement like that would be consistent with what we promised. The dispute on Umsuluzi, it was a technical dispute arising because there were errors in their numbers on specific items. They asked for an opportunity to correct. We'd given an opportunity before. We said you can't have another opportunity. They raised the dispute to say they want this dispute. So then the executive deemed it appropriate to give them another chance to submit, which we don't prefer because it delays the audit process. But in substance, it was them trying to delay so that they could fix matters. They still didn't fix them because they ended up with a qualified audit opinion. How do we deal with disputes? You'll see that there are fewer and fewer disputes that we can't deal with quickly. We have a dispute resolution mechanism which sets out a process that we agreed with SCOAC some time ago, which allows for people's views to be heard in a way that's fair, that's just, that's efficient and effective. And I think that it is genuinely working and it allows for integrity. Part of it is to say, if you have a dispute, because sometimes it's matters of judgment or of interpretation of different standards or regulations, etc., or even contracts. If you have a dispute with the audit team responsible for the audit, you can escalate to a senior executive who's not on the audit. That gives you a different pair of eyes from within the office to technically assess the matter so that the process is fair. And it is working quite well. The indigents, at the end of the day, we have to get to a point where the municipalities all have a policy that's properly established around how they're going to deal with this program. They budget appropriately for it. the funds that are allocated from through equitable share are properly budgeted for, their database or their register of indigent families is updated on a regular basis. Because if that happens, then you won't end up with people being paid that shouldn't be paid out of these funds. It's a policy, governance, and discipline matter. We've tried to support this by giving insight through data analytics and the fact that we're able to tell you that there are a number of municipalities where they are paying people who on the register are actually deceased, people who don't have IDs or have duplicate IDs on the register, and people who benefit from state tenders anyway. There are 52 municipalities where some of their indigent funds have gone to people employed by the state, are spouses of the state, or are contractors to the state, which is not the intention of that program. I think I have now dealt with each and every one of the questions that were raised. I've not just sidestepped the policy thing. I've decidedly said I'm not dealing with that one. And I'm going to end here, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, AG. There was a hand of Honorable Sandile Mwali. If you still want to raise your question, yes, there is your hand up. Please just introduce yourself and then raise the question. Is there any other member who wishes to, because this would be the last hand, if you can just indicate so we can round up at this point. Thank you very much, Honorable Mwali.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. My name is Sandile Mwali. I'm a member of Parliament and a member of SCOE. Can you hear me, Chair?
Please proceed. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. No, we would like to welcome the presentation from the AG. I would like to raise these few things or these few points. You know, Chairperson, it's disappointing that at this day and age, we still have municipalities that does not want or that do not want to do their work, because the submission of financial statement is primarily their work. It's the people who work there that need to produce the financial statement. Very disappointing, Chairperson, because we have accounting officers that needs to ensure and that needs to make sure that AG gets the financial statement at the end of the financial year. And also, Chairperson, we have council that oversee the work of the administration in those municipalities. That needs to ensure also that financial statements are produced and are sent to the AG for audit. Chairperson, we have Cooperative, who also plays an oversight role in this municipality. Now, my question is the mechanism working? Is the oversight mechanism from Cooperative working? Because we have also situations where municipalities fail to submit these financial statements, even when these municipalities are under administration and there's a representative from Cooperative who are ensuring that these municipalities get back to work efficient or get back to their financial health. But still, we find that these municipalities will not perform as they're supposed to. Chairperson, we are sitting with a group of people who goes to work and literally does nothing there. Because if you are going to have financial statements that are not submitted, or people are not doing their job, but they wake up every day and go to work, then why are they not closing shop? Why are they not leaving there? Because we can't have a history of financial statements not being submitted, and it is normal that people are not submitting financial statements and they are sitting with disclaimers, and it's getting normal. We will sit and try and craft policies after policies, mechanisms to try and address this. But the issue is the people who work there does not want to do the job. And it doesn't end there, Chairperson. It's issues of service delivery that never gets to our people. If you drill down to this issue, it doesn't end from the municipality. The primary responsibility of the municipality is to provide service. So really, this is a very disappointing picture of these municipalities who continually not want to comply and do as they are supposed to. And it's sad, Chairperson, because AG is also highlighting that 10 years ago, they highlighted the issue of the overuse of consultants because we don't have a skills transfer. We end up paying so much as this, or municipalities end up paying so much for consultants, but we also pay so much for personnel that works in these municipalities who are supposed to be the ones who actually do the work that is being done by the consultant. And years later, when you look at the performance of that municipality, it's not improving, but you keep on incurring this cost of paying the consultant. So the issue, as I chose, Chairperson, you would find that, or what I would like to highlight is that these municipalities, they are run by politicians. So one of the many issues here is the lack of political will to do the correct thing, which is to make sure that we serve our community. We sit in finance committees and fight our sweat and blood to make sure that these municipalities get to be allocated a bigger chance so that our people will get services on the ground. But it's a very disappointing picture when you sit with AG presenting such a picture of the municipalities that are not performing. So, Chairperson, really,
thank you. Thank you very much. I don't see any other hand. Any comments from the AG, and then we can try and round up.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. Thank you once again for the opportunity to share this work with you. It is work done by the dedicated teams of Team AGSA. Though it's not good news, we do trust that it is helpful in informing your oversight work as we aim to drive local government to a better space, because the people of the different towns and cities deserve so much better. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Maluleke and your team. We always look forward to this presentation. Certainly, as you say, it's not the best of news, but it is a good report. It gives us as much as we need to know. And as I've said, if I don't look good in the photo, I can't blame the photographer for that. So we are taking note of the issues we've raised. As the members have said, it looks like more or less the same report we got from last year. That indicates that there's little improvement. And of course, where there is improvement, you have also got counterbalancing regression. Of concern, I think, as the members have indicated, is the recurrence of disclaimers. And I think that we need to take those very seriously. And those are some of the issues why we need to actually move a step higher in terms of calling for accountability. The issue of late submission, particularly as it relates to serial offenders, again, this is something that needs to be dealt with, and we need to raise it properly. The issue of the use of consultants, this again, I think we need to be very direct as we deal with, because if the consultants were there to help to build capacity, then as we move on, you should actually see the numbers reducing. Now, to get consultants that still have bad results is still a problem. That's a waste of funds. So that for us is the issue. So when we are approaching this matter, there are a lot of issues which we have to focus attention to. Certainly the issue of long outstanding vacancies that have not been filled, of critical positions of people who should drive service delivery, infrastructure delivery, financial management, is a serious concern. Otherwise, you shouldn't have a municipality that is operating if it doesn't have those skills. Then again, the serial offenses around negative audit outcomes when it relates to performance audit, financial management, issues of procurement transgressions, and issues of poor revenue, poor debt management. Those issues for us are quite important. But what's been shocking is the report on the Treasury Debt Relief Program, 84% of whom are not compliant. Now, we did meet one municipality, I can't recall which one, who said you end up having to sign for participating in the debt relief because that's the only way you can negotiate with Treasury on how much of your equitable share will go and how much will be available. And then at the end, they say, well, we cannot raise adequate revenue even to honor what we have agreed about. Now, these issues need to be properly interrogated because 84% actually means that the whole debt relief scheme is actually not viable, or it's not working. So again, I think those issues need us to give full attention. Now, with the metros, we just can't get an excuse. They do have the necessary resources. They are the most attractive in terms of careers of senior, professionals. We cannot really expect that they should fail to perform on the basis of lack of skills because they have the money to procure those skills. And I think insofar as we will have to be focusing, we'll have to deal with that particular issue. We need more of them being able to prioritize performance and the necessary skills to be able to run the metro properly. And certainly, if they can't, what do you expect of the smaller municipalities? And I think the point has been well made. I think you have also alluded to a very important point, and sometimes we could call it elephant in the room, the issue of political will. Because of challenges related to political instability, now, a lot of these issues can be resolved if the leaders have the will and create the necessary culture and the discipline and the leadership, environment for good governance to happen. And on that basis, we need to then confront that as an issue because it's not a technical problem. It's an issue of political leadership. And I think your point has made it very clearly there. So as we approach this issue too, we'll be taking that into consideration from our point of view. So we will have to move out to involve not only just, as we normally do, discuss this with the minister, but we need to actually hold different layers of leadership accountable. So speaker of a province, premier of the province, MPs, to actually sit together to say, in the way the situation has been deteriorating, what has been your involvement? Now, that I think is important. One member here raised the question of the presidential working group. I would have expected that there would be no record of that because firstly, it's a new thing. And secondly, when we got the minister and the department to explain it, it's not more of an intervention more than it is a support, which means Section 154 on its own, we don't necessarily need to focus on it. We need to focus on what outcome we're getting. So I would say we would want to know what actions have been done to, assist the municipalities and to correct some of these issues. I think in particular for us, this aspect of the reports from the MEC to the executive, from executive to the municipal, to the speaker, to the provincial legislature, that is again something that you need to actually inquire about, because maybe if the speaker and the provincial legislature took a lot more, focus on this, would be having a different kind of, outcome. I think we have demonstrated in the case of Northwest, and I think with the Free State, where you have involvement of the senior executive in the provincial government, you can actually see the consequences. So I think we need to actually focus on that and tighten that aspect as well. So that everyone has to account and indicate what role have they played in getting this situation to be corrected. So with that, I think our main issue is trying to get a sense of consequence management. If there's transgression and there's no consequence management, you don't expect that there should be a change. And from that point of view, we need to actually deal with it. Even the question, you made it almost like in a lighter note that you have to train people to know how to inspect a breach. Actually, we need to be asking what monitoring mechanism is there, because you don't expect the Auditor-General to start training engineers and quantity surveyors to go and count the bricks in the breach or in a building to see whether this work was done properly. The implementing authority should have dealt with those issues, and we shouldn't really be stuck there. So I think it's an area that, again, has been quite important. The question of protection of the poor is very, very important. Again, we raise this each time we have to go to each of the municipalities, because we believe that saving resources to be able to protect the poor is actually one of the most important responsibilities of our government to do. So at the end of it, we need to ensure that there's appropriate, satisfactory service delivery in terms of water provision, management of sewage, electricity, fixing of roads, and cleanliness of the environment. All of these things are actually important as part of what these municipalities are supposed to do. So with that, we do want to welcome your support as we go out on the oversight visits. We have already had good support as we moved from municipality to municipality. Your team has been able to help us focus. We just need a little bit more of that. And as I've raised the issue, I'm saying, let's ask them to even sharpen areas where we could actually isolate specific questions and areas that need to be shown more light on, so that we are able to deal with this. Having said so, let me then say to you, we really do appreciate this report, and we will then be taking the matters forward. The honorable members of the committee have indicated that they would want a list of municipalities that we need to call to actually deal with this issue. It looks to me like we will probably call those municipalities when we're in their provinces already. So it looks to me like we're going to have to, work a little bit more aggressively to address these issues. It's not possible to explain why every year we get the same report for the past so many years, and we also, indicate our concerns and our displeasure, but we still don't see the changes. Something has to be done, and that's really where we want to stand. With that, let me then say thank you very much, Ms. Maluleka, and the entire team of the Auditor-General Office. Certainly, and congratulations on the number of chartered accountants that you have produced. It certainly should be one of the most prestigious institutions for the country to be, any professional would say I was produced through the Auditor-General Office. It certainly would be a matter of pride, and I think you should continue with that good work. Having said so, I want to say to the honorable members, we are at this point bring this meeting to the end, and therefore, thanks for your participation, and sorry for the glitches at the beginning of the session, but it has certainly worked out. We did know that some of the members had to log from a virtual platform, and thanks for your cooperation. And so this meeting at this point, therefore, is adjourned. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, AG.
Thank you. You didn't even show your faces to just make sure you're still part of the meeting.
We are here, Chair. You hear our
Thank you,
voice.
Chair. Thank you, AG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.